is Manigandan. I have around 15 years of work experience into the cybersecurity domain. I have worked on many technologies like Splunk, IBM QRadar. Along with that, I have also worked in McAfee database activity monitoring, along with Imperva and IBM Guardium. If I talk about my certifications, I have a CISSP, CCSP, CISO, CEH, EC Council certified analyst. I am also a AWS security specialist and architect associate. Along with that, I am also a Microsoft certified trainer for the last 10 years. So that's pretty much the introduction about myself. Now in the today's topic, we are going to discuss about the domain 7 incident management and recovery site. So now we are going to start with our first topic, that is incident management. So according to the NIST special publication 800-61 revision 2, we have an event which is basically an observable occurrence in a system or a network. So now when I am talking about an event can be multiple things, like a user connecting to a SharePoint server farm. Okay, a user connecting to a SharePoint server farm, an employee connecting to a CyberArk vault, an employee connecting to a SQL server. These all are events. So normally when we are talking about from the incident management team, we have a event management and we have an incident management. Normally, not all the events is a category of incident. Not all the events is the category of incident. So now when we are talking about adverse events, so now when we are talking about an incident preparation team, the first and foremost in an incident management is required is to identify the threats, to identify the risks, and to identify the vulnerabilities. The first and foremost step which is required in incident management is to identify the threats, to identify the risks, and to identify the vulnerabilities. Now there are some documents which you can refer to identify the threats, risks, and vulnerabilities which are faced by the organization. One of the best document is your BCP, business continuity planning. So in the BCP, we normally do a BIA, business impact assessment. We do normally do a BIA, business impact assessment. So in the business impact assessment, we normally conduct a risk assessment. So risk assessment is the document which you can refer to identify the threats, risks, and vulnerabilities which are faced by the organization. One of the another possible references for identifying the threats, risks, and vulnerabilities is your problem management record, okay, your problem management record. So your BCP, your BIA, your risk assessment, your problem management record, these are the some places from where you can identify the threats, risks, and vulnerabilities which are faced by the organization, which you can include in your incident preparation. So incident is basically a violation or threat of violation where it can come under a computer security policies, it can come under an acceptable use policies, or it can come under a standard security practices. So one of the live example of an acceptable use policy I can give you, like one of the live example of an acceptable use policy, like a company provided in a company provided laptop. In a company provided laptop, you are basically running the you are accessing social networking websites like Facebook, Twitter. that is directly a violation of acceptable use policies. Or you are inserting pen drive into the laptop, or inserting a portable hard disk. So now when we are talking about acceptable use policies, computer security policies, standard security practices. So one live example we have, so an employee inserting a pen drive on the system, or an employee accessing social networking websites. Okay, the employee accessing social networking website during business hours. These are all directly violating my acceptable use policies. So incident is basically a violation or a threat of violation. So it can be my computer security policies, it can be my acceptable use policies, and it can be my standard security practices. So normally when we are talking about an incident preparation team, when we are talking about an incident preparation, the preparation of incident should align with the organizational policies and data protection, with security goals and technical defenses. So whatever risks you have identified during your BCP, whatever risks, whatever vulnerabilities and threats you have identified during the BCP or during the BIA, those threats and risk needs to be addressed in the incident preparation. That needs to be addressed during the incident preparation. So at a minimum, you must ensure that all the employees have received information security staff awareness training, or they should also receive specific training on the incident response. So one live example I can give you, that all the employees, when a new employees join the organization, we normally have to go through an induction program, right? Once we have completed the induction program, every year all the employees, irrespective of whether they are contractors, consultants, or third party employees, they have to go with a security awareness training, right? So that's a perfect example of training the employees on incident response, so that the employees are much capable enough to detect the threats and vulnerabilities like your social engineering attack and all. So now what are the tools and resources which we have for incident response? So communication and coordination of an incident is very much necessary. Now when I say team, communication and coordination is very much necessary in an incident. One live example is, let's say your organization is based on Japan, and the earthquake has completely damaged the facility. Okay, the earthquake has hit Japan, and it has completely damaged the entire cell phone towers, which means that your smartphones are not available, or it's not accessible because there is no network. In those cases, in order to communicate and coordinate, you should have satellite phones. In order to communicate and coordinate, you should have a satellite phones. Your organization should have a proper contact list. Your organization should have a proper contact list, which should talk about whom to contact, which should talk about whom to contact, when to contact, and their contact details. Their contact details. Everything should be mentioned in the contact list. So if a security incident occurs, whom to contact, when to contact, and the contact detail addresses, everything should be mentioned. There should be consistent support from the on-call team, and if required, the incident should be escalated to the upper level team. If there should be an on-call team which should address the incident, and if required, the incident should be escalated to the upper level team. Now, when we are talking about the incident reporting mechanism team, in order to one of the biggest factor of an incident response is an incident reporting. So now in order to establish an incident reporting effective tracking mechanism is needed. So you should be able to track the incident which has occurred. So let's say if my organization, if there is a DOS attack, or if there is a phishing attack, if there is a DOS or phishing, and for that there is a security incident has been created, we should be able to track the progress of DOS attack and phishing attack. So that is the reason why we must have an effective tracking system. Now the next is team, we have a command center. Now what do you mean by command center? Command center is basically an incident command system, or it's a standardized on scene where all the risk and incident management can be conducted from a central place. So it allows the users and employees in an integrated organizational structure to match the complexities and demands of single or multiple incidents without being hindered by a jurisdictional boundaries. So normally you can say command center is just like a war room. Your command center is just like a war room. One live example I can give you in the command center is, normally you have seen in the movies and all that whenever some terrorist attack and all happens, all the critical defense people, they get engaged, they get together in a war room where all the decisions is made, right team, where all the decisions are made. That is a perfect example of a command center. So you can say command center is just like a war room where once the incident happens, all the team who are required on the scene will gather in a central place where all the decision in regards to the incident management, how to address the incident, how to respond to the incident, everything can be taken from a central place. That is called as your command center. Now, one of the thing which we have is storage for evidence and sensitive materials. Now, whenever an incident happens, team, okay, whenever an incident happens, you need to have a proper forensic process to collect the evidence which can be acceptable in the court of law. So now when I am talking about storage of evidence and sensitive materials, so you should have a proper chain of custody. You should have a proper chain of custody. You should have a proper chain of custody. Along with that, the chain of evidence. Along with that, the chain of evidence. So the chain of custody team, it talks about the chain of custody talks about who has handled the evidence, who has handled the evidence, when they handled the evidence, and what exactly they did, and what exactly they did in the evidence. So that talks about the chain of custody. Now, when I am talking about the chain of evidence, so one live example of a chain of evidence is, let's say in this case, I have a server, I have a jump server. Okay, I have a jump server. From this jump server, there is a database which was being accessed. From the jump server, there was a database which was being accessed, and the PII records of the database was stolen using the credentials. So now when we are talking about the chain of evidence, not only we need to collect the evidence from the database server, but we also need to collect the evidence from the jump server as well, because using the jump server only the database was connected. Along with that, you need to also collect the logs from the network firewall, from the switch and router, from wherever the traffic came in. So that is what is your chain of evidence is all about. So chain of custody, it talks about who has accessed the evidence, when they have access, and what exactly they did in the evidence. If a proper chain of custody is not maintained, then that evidence will not be acceptable in the court. So storing of evidence and sensitive materials is very much needed when we are talking about from an incident response. Now, when we are talking about an incident preparation team, every organization, they have a policies which is approved by the senior management and stakeholders, which talks about the state authority and mandate by which we can respond to the incident. So now in the incident preparation phase, we have a policies by which we establish the state authority and mandate to respond to the incident. Now, in order to respond to an incident, building a strong team is a critical element when we are talking about from the incident preparation phase. So what do you mean by building a strong team? Building a strong team means we should have a strong team related to the technical, communication, and project management skills. Now, when we say technical, communication, and project management skills, in the technical team, we require subject matter experts who knows how to handle an incident. So now when we are talking about the incident preparation team, building a strong team to address an incident is very much necessary. So we cannot have an immature involved in an incident management or an incident preparation. So subject matter experts who knows what to do with the incident need to be employed in the incident preparation phase. So we need to have a communication, we need to have people from the senior management, we need to have people from the support staff like HR, legal staff, and public relations. So now one live example why the public relations we is involved. So let's say your organization has recently faced a GDPR breach. Your organization has faced a GDPR breach. Now you need to inform the authorities and you need to inform the public about the personal data breach which has happened. So in that case, who is going to present this data to the media, management or public relation? The answer is public relation. So the public relation must communicate with the media. They are the one who is going to inform the media about the GDPR breach, and they are going to be the spokesperson for the organization who is going to inform the public about the recent breach and what the organization is doing to address that breach. So one of the first step in incident management is to follow, to delegate responsibilities and procedures. So for this team, we have a document which is your 27000 2013 ISO 27002, which we can use as a first step to address the incidents and delegate the responsibilities and procedures. So this assigned responsibilities to the individuals like SOC analysis during an incident and set forth the procedures that must be followed. So one live example of delegating the responsibilities: in every organization team, we have a SOC. In every organization, we have a SOC team. And in SOC team, we have a SOC lead, SOC analyst and all. So normally, whenever a security incident is raised, the security incident is always investigated and analyzed by the SOC analyst. So the SOC analysis which you are hiring in the organization, they should know how to conduct an investigation about a security incident. They should know how to conduct the investigation of a security incident. Now nowadays, one live example I can give you. Nowadays many organizations have started employing your SOAR tool, right, by which we can develop the playbooks which will guide the SOC analyst, which will guide the SOC team to identify the threats, risks, and vulnerabilities and how to investigate. Like one live example is, if a web server is infected with the virus, then how to isolate the web server, to which team we have to reach out. All these things we document on the playbook of the SOAR, which will guide the SOC team, to analyze, which will guide the SOC team to analyze how to investigate the incident, which team to contact to isolate the system. So all this thing is required in the incident preparation phase. Now, when we are talking about an incident preparation phase, preventing incidents. So preventing incidents like security incidents, preventing incidents into the network like your DDoS attack, DOS attack, preventing incidents to the host endpoints like virus, virus attack and all. So in order to prevent the incidents team, the major role of preventing an incident from the incident management perspective is you should have you should have the data readily available which was conducted during the BCP. So in the BCP phase, after we complete the business impact assessment, we conduct a risk assessment where we identify all the risks which can create a challenge to the organization to achieve their vision and mission. So we need to identify all the risks which can impact the functionality of the organization, like, is my organization vulnerable for a DDoS attack? Is my organization vulnerable for a DOS attack? Does my organization vulnerable for SQL injection attack? Does the websites have a proper web application firewall? Does it vulnerable for cross-site scripting attack? So whatever threats, vulnerabilities we have, we need to identify those with the help of risk assessment. Then for preventing, virus attack and all, we have a malware prevention, like your antivirus, anti-malware solution. And we need to regularly train the people by doing a user training and awareness, where the people of the organization should be aware of the latest threats and vulnerabilities which are there in the market. The ultimate goal of an incident management is to reduce the impact of the incident. The ultimate goal of an incident management is to always reduce the impact of the incident. So the prevention of an incident is achieved through a comprehensive and well designed security plan that minimizes the attack surface. So that is the advantage of having an incident preparation. Now, when we are talking about the incident detection team, an incident can come from various log sources. Like, normally, if your organization is using an IBM QRadar, if your organization is using an IBM QRadar, if if the organization is using your IBM QRadar, IBM ArcSight, or Splunk Enterprise, firewalls, gateways, IDS, these are all my log sources. So one live example I can give you in the incident in IBM QRadar, it is called as a security offense. So alert about an incident can come from various log sources. So definitely, if you are using a SIM, security incident and event manager, like IBM QRadar, ArcSight, Splunk Enterprise, custom racing incidents or tickets. So the incidents and tickets can be raised by the employees. The incident and tickets can be raised by the existing employees. The incident can come from detection devices like smoke or motion sensors, which are related to the physical security. An incident can come from law enforcement or external parties as well. Software and hardware vendors, they can also intimate about new vulnerabilities and threats. So if you are using an IBM QRadar, if you are using an ArcSight or Splunk, whenever there is a new threat or vulnerability comes, the software vendor, they send an email, and they send an email to all the customers that what are the new threats and vulnerabilities which has been identified in the product, and which patch they can download to address those vulnerabilities. So that is there. We can also identify the incident by integrating our SIM appliances with threat feeds like IBM Watson or IBM X-Force. And we can also detect the incident based on anomalies like user behavioral analytics. So live example is, my employee is connecting over the weekend. My employee is trying to run too much amount of DML and DDL commands, or an existing employee is trying to touch a sensitive table. So these kind of anomalies can be discovered by the machine learning, and it can trigger an alert. So there are multiple log sources from where an incident can come. Now, one of the biggest challenges when we are talking about an incident detection is to identify different attack vectors. The volume of log traffic. So rather than maintaining the quantity of the log, the quality of the log is very much necessary when we are talking about investigating an incident. That is the reason why we have this kind of clipping levels and all. So clipping level, one live example I can give you about a clipping level is, if the count of fail login exceeds 10 in the last 15-minute interval, then generate an offense. If the count of fail logins exceed the count 10 in the last 15 minutes interval, generate an offense. So we need to have a proper clipping level to reduce the volume of log traffic. Rather than maintaining the quantity, we need to capture the quality of logs, which can be used by the SOC analysis to investigate the incident. One of the biggest challenges when we are talking about incident investigation is the lack of skill set and knowledgeable staff. So if you are using tools like IBM QRadar, you are using tools like ArcSight, Splunk and all, you need to identify that whether the people, whether the SOC team, the SOC analysis, whether they have the necessary knowledge to use that tool to investigate the incident. If they don't have that right amount of skills and knowledge, then it doesn't matter how much costly tool you are going to give, it's not going to produce any result. Now when we are talking about an incident identification team, so we have a true positive and we have a false positive. So what do you mean by true positive and false positive? True positive means where the rule is matched and the attack is present, and your SIM or your intrusion detection system has triggered an alert. So true positive means the rule is matched and the attack is present and your IDS has generated an alert. That is called as your true positive. Okay, now when I am talking about a false positive means where the rule is matched and no attack is present. Where the rule is matched and no attack is present. So it's a kind of a false positive. So live example I can give you, if the count of fail logins exceeds 10 in the last 15-minute interval, then generate an offense. But what happened, in the count of fail login never reached 10, it only reached 5, but still my SIM or my intrusion detection system went and created an offense. That's a kind of a false positive. So there is rule match and no attack present. Now, what do you mean by true negative? It means no rules are matched and no attacks is present. But as a SOC analyst, okay, we need to give more importance to the false negative. So false negative has to be given more importance when we are talking about an incident detection, because in false negative means no rule matched but the attack is present. So which means you haven't defined the rules, but there was an attack which went unnoticed by the SOC team. So false negative is the one which is very critical when we are talking about the incident identification. So we need to identify the true and false positive, gather more details about an incident, and proper analysis of the data. So proper analysis of the data means what? Analyzing the events, analyzing the flows, analyzing the payload, all these are critical aspect when we are investigating the incident. So analysis of data, if authentic, determine the severity and scope is also a critical element for the incident detection. Now documentation is a critical element of an incident detection team. So you need to document the status of the incident, whether the incident is in progress, whether the current incident is currently, the investigation of an incident is in progress or it is closed. We need to document the summary of the incident. We need to identify the alerts or indicators, identified any related incidents, cross reference the incident with the previous cases, identify what actions was taken to address that incident, calculate the impact assessment, establish a proper chain of custody like capturing the list of evidence and all, and make sure that you have a proper contact information. So prioritization is a critical element for an incident detection because it drives it. The prioritization deals directly with the impact on the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So the ultimate incident detection documentation should include all this. Along with that, you need to have a proper prioritization that which incident needs to be resolved first. So one live example I can give you. Let's say if I have a web server. Okay, let's say I have a web server. Okay, and I have a database server. I have a web server and I have a database server. Now database server is processing my PII, database server is processing my PHI, and database server is processing my PCI DSS data. So when an incident comes, you need to investigate the incident from the database server first. So when we are talking about the database server and all, we need to give more importance to investigate the incident from the database server because it is processing my PII, PHI, and credit card related data. So establishing a proper prioritization is very much important aspect to address the confidentiality, integrity, and availability and ability to recover. As I mentioned, the ultimate goal of an incident management is to reduce the impact of the incident. The ultimate goal of an incident management process or incident response is to reduce the impact of the incident. So now when we are talking about an incident detection team, notifying the appropriate people, we need to once we detect the incident notification, we need to inform the senior management, we need to inform the infosec team, inform about the incident to the system owner, the HR, legal team, the public relations team should prepare a message and they should notify the media and the public. So at any point of time, so one live example is if there is a GDPR breach, the public relation team is the one who is going to communicate about this incident to the media and to all the public. So they are the one who is going to inform about the security incident to the media and all the public. So they are the spokesperson about the incident in an organization. We need to inform the regulators, customers, law enforcement, and whatever communications are happening within the organization about the incident, it should be encrypted. If you and you can also post about the incident recovery. You can also post the status of the incident, like what the organization is doing, to address the incident. So you can have a proper notification to the general public, website, email, and voicemail. So you can post the notification about an incident. You can notify the general public. You can post the incident recovery, what exactly the organization is doing to recover from the incident in the website. You can also send an email or you can send a voice email as well. So we need to inform the customer and media. We need to inform the internet service provider, the incident reporters, law enforcement, and the software and support vendors. All those people we need to involve when there is an incident is detected. Once we have detected the incident team, then we have to involve the containment strategy. So now we are going to respond to the incident. So depending on the type of incident, immediate response and rapid expansion is needed. If you are taking longer time, if your incident response team is taking longer time to address and resolve the incident, that means your incident response process is not effective. So we need to immediately respond to the incident. So if it is your incident management team is taking a longer response time, it means your incident response team is not effective to address the incident. So we need to have a isolation. So which means if a web server is infected with the virus, immediately isolating the web server so that issues like lateral movement and the virus infecting other web servers in the web server farm doesn't happen. One another live example of isolation I can give you: the moment a patient is detected with COVID-19 symptoms, or the moment the the RT-PCR report comes positive, immediately isolating the patient. That is also a good example of an incident response. So you need to do a isolation, contain the incident to provide time to prepare appropriate response. So now what are the containment actions we can have? We can shut down the system, we can disconnect the system from the network, we can suspend the business operations, we can quarantine the system, quarantine the virus. We also have this sandbox and all, so where we are limiting the incident to a sandbox. So for this purpose we have this honeypots and honey net, where we are redirecting the attacker to a honeypot and honey net, where we are monitoring the attacker's activity and building the defenses. That is also one good example of a sandbox. Your virtual machine, your containerization, micro segmentation is also a good example of sandbox only. Now, what are the challenges which are faced by the containment? Now, one of the biggest challenges which are faced by the containment is potential damage to other systems. If your incident response policy is not effective, if you are not able to contain the incident within a given time frame, then it can impact other systems as well. So that is the reason why we say that incident management is a critical element when we are talking about the incident response. To how much time your incident response team is taking to contain the incident is a driving factor of an incident response. Otherwise, we can have challenges like lateral movement, we can have challenges like virus spreading, infecting other systems or other applications on the network. So in order to reduce the impact, we need to contain the incident. Now, when we are talking about the containment, containment may affect the integrity of the evidence. So what do you mean? So if you are trying to contain an incident in a virtual machine, or if you are VMware ESX, or if you are trying to have a your ICS devices or your embedded devices, in this, containing the incident may impact the integrity of the evidence, by which the evidence will not be acceptable in the court. You need to also make sure that the continuous availability of the systems. So the system should be, the other system should be available, and how much time your incident response team is taking to recover from the incident. These are some challenges which will be faced by the incident response team when they are trying to contain the incident. One live example time required to recover is, so if a patient is infected with the COVID-19, it takes around 14 days for the patient to recover from the COVID symptoms. So that is called as your time required to recover. So that 14 days is my incubation period once the person is impacted with the COVID-19 symptoms. We also have a evidence gathering. So once you have contained the incident, start documenting time of the incident, identify the MAC and IP address, the host name and the operating system, what was the model numbers of the equipment which was impacted with the incident, capture the location and capture the investigator information. That means capture the name of the person who is conducting the investigation. All these things has to be properly documented if that evidence must be submitted in the court. So time of incident, capturing the IP, host name, operating system, usernames, okay, model numbers of the affected component, location, and the investigator details who are conducting the incident. That is also critical element to identify the incident. Once you have captured the evidence, the next is eradication. So eradication means remove everything related to the incident. which means you may require to rebuild or replace the hardware, software, or people. You may have to rebuild the hardware, software, or people. So one live example is, if your system is infected with the virus, first we will try to quarantine the virus, and then we will rebuild the entire operating system. So that is my eradication stage. If a system is if there is a hard disk failure, replacing the hardware. So eradication means remove everything related to the incident. It may require a rebuild and replacement of hardware, software, and personnel. You can reset the passwords, implement the patch to prevent reoccurrence, tighten the network parameter. You can enhance the logging and analysis using the security incident and event management. Also, the ultimate goal of an eradication stage is to return to normal operations, minimize the business impact, restore the user functionality, and make sure that all the infected systems have been cleaned. So this is what happens in the eradication stage. The next is we have a researching the attack. Now, what do you mean by researching the attack? So once you have eradicated the system, start researching about an attack, what went wrong, how it went wrong. So like, try to conduct a third party investigation and law enforcement, verify the IP address from which country the attack was done, try to identify the attack signatures, whether it was a 0-day attack and all, review dark web and hacker forum communications for more details. And once you have done all this, post incident activity, learn and improve. What you could have done, to prevent this incident from happening. So you need to learn and improve. Lessons learned, what happened, what was done, and how well the incident handled. So now, one live example I can give you from the COVID-19 situation. So not wearing mask, not taking vaccination, not sanitizing your hands, not maintaining a 10 feet distance. These are all the lessons learned. Or during the COVID lockdown, going out without wearing a mask. These are all the lessons learned. If you would have followed all the precautions, maybe you would not have got the COVID symptoms in the first place. So post incident activity root cause analysis is an important thing which we do it in the post incident activity, RCA, root cause analysis. One live example, if a system is accidentally, if a production database server got rebooted, why the reboot happened in the first place? If a production database server has been rebooted, why the reboot happened in the first place? What you could have done to prevent to prevent the reboot? If there is a system which is in fact infected with, if a system is impacted with a DOS or DDoS, what you could have done to prevent this attack from happening? All these root cause analysis can be done in the lessons learned. So what happened, what was done, how well the incident has handled, and what the incident management team could have done to prevent this incident from occurring. So all these are the post incident activity which can happen after you research the attack. Now the final topic in the security operations is the recovery site. So now what do you mean by a recovery site? Recovery site is a location that allows an organization to restore data, critical infrastructure, and essential business operations in the event of an unexpected event. Now team, there are three main types. When we are talking about from an incident management, from a recovery site point of view. Okay, so now when I'm talking from the recovery side point of view, team, there are three types of site. Okay, we have a hot site, we have a warm site, we have a cold site, and we have a mirror site. So in the CISSP, all these sites, mirror site, hot site, warm site, cold site, they are all testable in the exam. Now when I am talking about a mirror site, so mirror site, the perfect example of a mirror site is your active/active cluster. The perfect example of a mirror site is your active/active cluster. So in the active/active cluster, both the systems are active. Okay, so normally if you want to restore the functionality, within minutes, okay, so now normally what happens in a mirror site, that we have a people, we have a people we have a process, we have a process, and we have a technology. We have a people, process, and technology. Along with that, the live data. All these are replicated between the primary and the between the active slash active node. So that is the reason why we say that in the active slash active, there is zero downtime. When you want to recover or restore the data within 10 minutes, restore the system within 10 minutes to 15 minutes, okay, this at this point of time you will go for a mirror site. But the problem with the mirror site is it is very costly to implement for the organization. Now we also have something called as a hot site team. So what do you mean by a hot site? Hot disaster recovery site mirrors the capabilities of the primary location as fully as possible and can be up and running almost immediately with minimal disruption. Now when we are talking about a hot site, now there are two types of hot site team. One is we have an internal hot site, and we have a external hot site. So external hot site means it is maintained by the cloud provider. External hot site means it is maintained by the cloud provider like AWS and Azure. So an internal hot site means it is built by the organization. So in the internal hot site means your on-prem data center which is built by the organization, and when the organization is going for an external hot site, it is buy. So definitely, which one is more costly, build or buy? Need your response in the chat box. Which one is more costly, build or buy? Definitely, building a data center from the scratch is more costly comparative to buy. Because when you are going for a cloud, you are basically moving from capex to opex. So you are only paying the operational expenditure. So now, after the hot site, a hot disaster recovery site, it basically mirrors the capabilities of a primary location as fully as possible and can be up and running almost immediately with minimum disruption. Now we also have something called as a warm disaster recovery site team. So now what do you mean by a warm disaster recovery site? It includes the key equipment and functionality but takes longer to set up and does not have the complete data full functionality offered by the hot site. So now what do you mean by a warm site? In warm site, we have a people, we have a process, we have a rack, we have a rack, we have the internet connection, internet service provider, but we don't have any data. So we have a people, process. In technology we have the rack, we have the internet service provider, but we don't have any data. So when the organization is having a time, so if the organization is having a recovery time, that where we have to restore the system within 3 hours, that is my maximum tolerable downtime which the organization can sustain. So when the organization is having a downtime that within 3 hours or 4 hours everything has to be restored, in that case we can go for a warm site. So the thin line difference between a warm and the mirror site is, warm site is your cost effective solution. It means during a disaster, the servers needs to be shifted, the data must be transferred to the warm data center and restore it from there. So when where the organization is having a 3 hour or 4 hours of downtime, in that case, and the organization is looking for a cost effective solution, they can go for a warm site. We also have a cold disaster recovery. So cold disaster recovery means what? it's just like an empty warehouse. It's just like an empty warehouse which can be used where we only have the power and cooling. We only have the power and cooling. We have the HVAC and the power. We don't have the rack, we don't have the servers, we don't have the data. So now when we are talking about from a disaster recovery point of view, the cold disaster recovery will take more time to recover comparative to your hot, mirror and warm, because everything must be transferred from the primary side to the cold side. Now, one of the possible examples, one of the live examples of a cold site is some organizations they can go for the cold site. In which cases, where the organization is already having a on-prem data center, where the organization is having a on-prem data center, and they are also having an external hot site maintained in. They also have an external hot site maintained in AWS. Okay, so if my primary data center goes down, their functionality can run from the external hot side. But now the organization parallelly they are building their capabilities in the cold side. They are shifting the servers, they are shifting the rack, they are shifting the data, everything to the cold side, because there is a parallel hot side which is running, which is serving the customers. So this is what your disaster recovery hot, warm, cold site is all about. We also have a mobile site. Now one live example of mobile site is I can give you. If anyone in this training, if they you would have watched the Money Heist second season. In that Money Heist, they build a modular data center in a van. They build a modular data center in a van. That is your mobile site, which can be easily portable in a shipping container and all. That is your mobile site.